Good afternoon. As always, I'll start with a review of our last performance. As I said after the game, it was really a disappointing loss for us, but especially considering what was at stake. So I'll just outline kind of how the game unfolded. I thought we got off to a solid start. That was one of the reasons why we wanted to take the ball. We felt good about our plan in terms of being able to get off to a fast start. We felt like that was important because of the magnitude of the game, the venue, and things of that nature. I was comfortable with the beginnings from that perspective. Really kind of in all three phases. I thought the punt block was significant, and I can't say enough about our punt block or our block units. They've been really consistent. It's been an advantage for us for the better part of the season. But that was a component of the good start. I thought as we got into the second quarter, things began to unravel. First and foremost, from a personnel perspective, I think we lost both our safeties on back-to-back plays. Kazee got ejected from the game, and then Mika got hurt. And so we were really stressed there. We talked a lot about down the middle of our defense, whether it's interior linebackers or safeties, and the in-game attrition component of that made it difficult at times to operate. I thought that was reflective kind of in the 2-minute sequence where they were able to drive the field and get a touchdown before the half, before we could reconfigure the people at our disposal and kind of get really comfortable with how we were dividing the labor up. I thought we felt it there. I thought we had a chance to avoid that if we converted a very makeable third down on the front side of that 2 minute when we still had the ball. I think we had Fryer-Muth over the ball in the middle of the field versus zone defense, and we weren't able to connect there. And I just think that, playing connected in and around the half, or our inability to, was significant in terms of how the game unfolded. We missed a significant possession down there and wasn't able to maintain possession of the ball and maybe put some points on the board ourselves prior to the half. Flip it, they go to the length of the field and score before the half. Coming out in the second half, we did get a 3-and-out, but I thought that was lessened, obviously, by the fumble to start the half, and then they were able to put 7 points on the board. And so there were some sequences around halftime, the bookending of halftime, that I thought really kind of affected how this game was unfolding and eventually did unfold. We didn't do anything to help ourselves, as I mentioned. Aside from that, the penalty component, particularly when you're leaking from a personnel perspective, getting behind the chains offensively or major penalties and so forth on defense don't help you, and they didn't for us. Communication and leverage and fundamental things need to be improved. The schematic component of it needs to be improved. What I mean is, and I was really transparent with our team, at times components of our ball looks like September ball, where some of the guys that are playing have September levels of playing experience. And so we can't make December calls with September people with playing experience. So I think it's important as we formulate a plan this week that we're really thoughtful about the configuration of people that we have at our disposal and making sure that they're capable of delivering what we're asking them to do. That's as big a component as anything when you're managing less than ideal circumstances from a personnel standpoint, and I'll outline that further as I get to some of the personnel-related things. I also talked about after the game that we were definitively open to making whatever changes necessary in an effort to change the outcome of football games. Man, you don't need more than 2 or 3 weekends to see a pattern, particularly ones that you don't like. And so we're not going to sit on our hands and hope for a different outcome. And so we're in the midst of working through some of those things right now. Oftentimes, the discussion comes down to players or divisional labor, but make sure that you understand that those conversations are not exclusive to that. The strategic component of it is huge in terms of what we're asking people to do collectively and their ability to execute it. From a player perspective, it's our intention as we sit here today to give Mason Rudolph an opportunity to start. He's a veteran guy. He's a backup, but he's also a veteran guy. He's been in our program a long time. He's here for those reasons. We got a great deal of comfort with him. Why are we making the change? Man, we don't like what we're looking at and the consistency of it. What I mean is we're not scoring enough points. particularly as you move into December football, man. You got to score more than 12, 14, 16 points in games this time of year. You better assume that others are doing the same. The engineering of victory is not going to be fluid if you're not doing those things. And obviously, by nature of the position, the guy that has the ball in the quarterback position, man, that's a catalyst for change and an opportunity. And so we want to give him some snaps from a preparation standpoint, some in-helmet perspective. Not dumping the outcome of the game at Mitch's feet. I'm not saying that, but I am saying the guy at that position is at the controls and does have a big say in how some things unfold. And it's more about really Mason Rudolph being deserving of an opportunity and us trying to change the trajectory of what's been transpiring. Also included in that, I just had a conversation with Kenny. He had a really good rehab today. His availability is not out of question this week. But at the front part of the week, our attention and emphasis will be on Mason Rudolph, and we'll leave the door ajar and see how Kenny responds to the work that he did today, the limited work that we're probably going to give him tomorrow, and again, establish a position in terms of a pecking order the closer that we get. But as I stand here today, Mason Rudolph is the guy with the ball. We're going to support him and ready him. Obviously, we're looking at a lot of divisional labor things. People that are available to us are a component of it. Last week in game, we lost those safeties in game, and then Trenton went down at various points in game. The safeties that we're playing, Killebrew and others, also have a full special teams menu, much like Mark Robinson and some linebackers who are in a similar circumstance. And so we're really looking at being inclusive in terms of some guys. There's some guys in our program that are capable NFL veterans that haven't been given an opportunity yet. We're open to that. Myles Garrett, Eric Rowe, for example, are two guys with defensive playing experience that are in strong consideration given some things that are going on. And so there's a lot of discussions to be had that way from a personnel standpoint. There's a lot of discussions to be had from a schematic standpoint in terms of the things that we're doing differently. Our approach to work this week in terms of the things that we emphasize, man, we got to be good in weighty moments. We've given up some red zone opportunities, so it might include some defensive schematic installs, so we might have to, allocate more time to that. Whatever it is that we have to do to change the trajectory of what's been going on, we're open to. We got a can-do attitude and approach regarding it. Had a good meeting yesterday with our players. The ongoing strategic meetings with the staff have been highly productive yesterday and today. And so that's kind of where we are. Let's talk about Cincinnati. They're a group that appears to be trending in the right direction since the last time we played them. They're gaining some real traction. I'll start first with their offense. Browning is doing a really good job of taking care of the ball. His completion percentage speaks to that. Their lack of turnovers or their ball security speaks to that. But it's not just him, it's them. They've done some schematic things to really do a nice job of staying on schedule, not being one-dimensional, working to keep defenses off balance, changing launch points. Again, he's new to playing, but not new to their program. And I think we talked about that last time, but I think that is increasingly evident as he's gained more in-helmet perspective on play over the last 3 weeks. At running back, man, we got to minimize Mixon and his impact on the game, whether it's run or in the passing game. We got hit on a big screen in a significant moment. Screens are a big component of what they do, particularly with him. The rookie, Chad, has come on in recent weeks. That is something to consider also from a running back perspective that might be a little bit different than the last time we played him. T. Higgins is a component of what they're doing. We didn't see T last time, and so we were able to allocate a lot of schematics toward Chase. When you're dealing with a full arsenal, you got to deal with T. Higgins and Chase and Tyler Boyd. So obviously we got some more schematic challenges in those situational passing moments because he's got a full repertoire of people to spread the ball around to. And so, those are some of the things that have our attention on that side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, they're playing really good situational ball, standing up in big moments. Mike Hilton, big interception in the red area, I thought really kept that thing in striking distance for him the other day. But we know and are familiar with Mike. He is a big catalyst for them. I think he's third or fourth in tackles for them. He's always had an appetite for the big play. He shows up off the edge in the run game a lot. They're bringing some pressure in the run game. They're bringing battle as well at the safety position. They got really good continuity in terms of the things that they do. We're familiar with them, but it doesn't necessarily provide comfort for us. They're familiar with us as well. And I just think that's a texture of divisional play, particularly this time of year. It's not only the knowing, the familiarity in terms of being in the same stadium repeatedly over the last several years, but it's also the volume of tape from this year, where there's less speculation about what personalities might be theirs and ours. I think that always adds to the intensity of divisional play. Obviously, it's going to be an intense atmosphere. It's a big game for us. It's a divisional game. It's our last home regular season game. And for those reasons, man, we're working with an edge here on a Monday as we get ready. I've talked enough, man. I'll pause. Hold up. Let me talk injuries. Kenny Pickett, obviously, as I mentioned, can be described as questionable. He'll be working in a limited capacity. We'll see where his availability leads us. Mika can be described as out with a knee injury. Cam Hayward is in the concussion protocol, so I won't add any color to that. We'll see where the protocol leads us. Trenton Thompson, as I mentioned, was able to finish the game, but had a stinger in game that limited his effectiveness. We'll see his availability. And Elijah Riley is a guy that has the potential to be available to us, and particularly with some of the attrition things going on at the safety position, his potential availability could be an asset to us. With Minka down, obviously with Keanu O'Neal being on IR, Elijah Riley, Eric Rowe, as I mentioned, those type guys, man, are under strong consideration as we divide the labor up and formulate a plan here in the early portions of the week. I'll pause and open up for questions.
Mike, two questions. Is Keanu O'Neal's injuries at season ending, but what is it about Mason? What can he do to help generate drops?
I'm not ready to speak to whether or not Keanu's injury is season ending, but he's not available to us this week. Rudolph, man, he's been a part of our program. He knows us, we know him. He's tough-minded. He's got a lot of confidence in himself. He's a competitor. And so those are some of the things that are really attractive about giving him an opportunity this week.
Mike, what would you need to see out of Kenny for him to be in play this week?
First of all, the medical experts lead the charge in that regard in terms of medical clearance, and then it's his overall effectiveness. First and foremost, his ability to move and protect himself, and then secondly, his effectiveness in terms of movement, his ability to ad-lib, etc.
Are there specific attributes, especially when you remember Mason being their starter, that he has that you think can help you guys more than what you've seen so far in the QB position?
He's just good under tough circumstances, man. He is a competitor. He believes in himself. He's a calculated risk taker. I believe that mentality is helpful to us under these circumstances.
Like, how do you like the way he's handling himself in the role you think?
Man, he's a professional. He is always prepared. When given an opportunity, he competes. He's extremely supportive of others, whether it's guys at his position or whether it's anybody on the offense, and all our quarterbacks are. We got a really good group in that way in terms of communicating, gaining cohesion and understanding, having informal conversations in an effort to get on the same page. We got a really good group in that regard, and he's been a critical component of that.
Only 16 snaps for him in 2 years. Is there a rust factor component there that he's knocked off, or how do you approach that?
Certainly there is, and I think that's why, when you ask me about his potential availability in recent weeks, I've been less apt to say so. But again, as I said after the game, we're not going to sit on our hands and hope for a change in terms of some of the things that we need to change. We're going to actively pursue it.
Mike, is that why you wanted to give him some reps at the end of the game on Saturday?
Exactly.
How big was long?
I'll leave that between here and now. I think that's appropriate. But rest assured, he was really professional.
Mike, you caught
Saturday. I understand you've got moving parts in there, but a lot of guys get to call these guys have been in there all year. How does that happen in December?
You know, we haven't developed in some ways that we would like to. And fundamentally poor might be an exaggeration, but it also in some ways is accurate. Because there's there's December levels of execution, and then there's September levels of execution. And 5 penalties from a unit is September-like, to be quite honest with you. That's gonna slow you down in December when you're trying to drive, engineer, and keep pace and score and do the things that you're doing when you're engineering victory this time of year. And so, you know, in some instances, that might be an exaggeration, but from the perspective in which I sit in terms of what needs to happen this time of year, that's why I refer to it as poor.
Mike, there's only so many personnel changes you can make in that regard. How do you get their attention to get better play?
We're gonna continue to work every day.
Mike, are you concerned about the level of urgency? I mean, last week you outlined in the Colts game, you talked just like you did about the Bengals game. It's a big week for us, we understand the stakes, and you see the final 3 quarters of that game, the way it unfolded. Do you think your players share the level of urgency that you have?
I do, but urgency doesn't always mean execution.
Mike, last week you said that George's frustrations weren't productive, and that's something you wanted to change. You had a conversation with him. How did you feel like he responded in the game on Saturday?
I thought he was better, but still has obviously room for continued improvement.
Mike, there was a play where Jalen Warren was rushing down to the goal line and George Pickens wasn't finishing a block there. Is there a discipline or an effort that you have to get more out of him and other players?
That's one of the examples that I'm talking about in terms of still obvious room for improvement.
Mike, how do you get his attention if you've had talks with him outside of having him sit for a while and watch?
We keep working.
Mike, the lack of execution and penalties, the September things that are happening in December, how much of that is a reflection on the coaching staff and what you guys are imparting to the team?
A lot of it. That's why I opened my post game the way that I did. I said that starts with me. Forget the coaching staff. It starts with me.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, you know, where can you think you'd be better as a coach?
Man, we're going to work every day. We're going to have a can-do attitude. We're not going to be helpless. We're going to be helpful. The collective individuals. I'm excited about getting started to work tomorrow. I think that's one of the beautiful and challenging things of our league, man. It's every week in this league. 1 week you're drinking wine, the next week you're squashing grapes. Obviously, we squashed a lot of grapes of late. I'm interested in a little wine.
Is there a change of tone that you feel might be needed to, set that new tone at this point for you?
Certainly, but that's not things that I disclose or talk about openly in this setting. That's to say that it doesn't mean that it's not transpiring, but to be quite honest with you, that's not this setting's business.
The success of backup quarterbacks like Browning, is that more about, hey, this guy may have been really good and the whole league was just missing out on him for this time, or is that a credit to the offense for what they're able to do to put him into a successful situation?
I'm sorry, I missed the very beginning of your question.
I'm sorry, talk about Jay Browning and his success. I mean, it seems unlikely the guy's been around for this long and the whole NFL just missed out on a guy who's really, really good. Like, is that more about the team and how they're able to put him in a position to have success?
You know, sometimes there's a level of preparedness that's not reflective of playtime. He's been in that program a long time. Just like Mason Rudolph has been in our program a long time. And that provides a higher floor for performance, I think. And so we're not surprised sometimes when people get an opportunity to improve their capabilities, particularly when they've been in the wings and working for an extended period of time. It's similar to Minshew last week. He came over from Philadelphia. He's got a history within that system of offense that even most people that start in that offense don't have because he came over with the coaching staff. And so there's oftentimes some exposure that's not reflective of playtime that tees up performance.
That Frymouth play you mentioned, was he supposed to sit on that, or was that just a missed throw by Michigan?
You know, I'm not going to assign blame that it was a miscommunication. We're all responsible for making sure that we throw and catch that ball versus zone coverage at a makeable down and distance. It was a significant play, to be quite honest with you, not only in terms of our ability to maintain possession of the ball and move forward and maybe, put some points on the board before the half, but also, as I mentioned, they were subsequently able to drive the field and book in the half themselves.
Mike, are you concerned that there's a bit of a leadership void among your players offensively?
I'm concerned about a lot of things, leadership or lack of experience, in some instances being been a component of that, but not in an abnormal way.
Mike, other than quarterback, will there be any other adjusting of rules, not preventing injuries?
But there will be, but those discussions are ongoing. I just gave you a sampling because I knew you guys would want to, get some information in that regard. And we're very much in the developmental stages of this plan, and that component includes division of labor, and so some of those discussions are ongoing and will be.
Mike, how do you readdress your offensive line? You guys had some really strong back-to-back performances for a while, and now it seems like there's a lot of those fundamentals have wilted away in recent weeks. How do you reclaim what they were doing well?
I don't know that it's wilted away. I think we got one-dimensional, and that exposes you, particularly against a good front like the one we just saw in their venue. I don't know that, drastic adjustments need to happen there. We need to obviously play better, and we need to position them to do so, but changes at that position are not dramatic ones.
Will there be any opportunities for Blake Martinez or Miles Jack this week?
Yes, I mentioned Miles Jack earlier, I think, when I was talking about he and Eric Rowe. Particularly when given an opportunity to assess and plan every week, man, all of those guys are given an opportunity and under strong consideration. Sometimes things that happen in game, the way the attrition happened at safety in our last game, obviously you're not afforded those opportunities on some in-game circumstances.
Mike, do you guys have maturity issues on offense? Some of your skill position players?
We got dealing with adversity issues, and sometimes that can be characterized as maturity issues, certainly.
Mike, looking back at that decision not to kick the 57-yard field goal, go back over that again.
Yep.
Was Boswell dealing with anything?
No, he was dealing with nothing. The play before, I wanted to be aggressive and take a shot down the field. That wasn't afforded to us. And so then I wanted to check the ball down. We didn't. We threw the ball out of bounds, and we didn't improve our field goal positioning. And so we're looking at a 56, 57-yard field goal. With our defense leaking the way that it was leaking, I wanted to maintain a posture where we protected them, as opposed to potentially put them in harm's way. If you miss a long field goal, the defense is working on a short field, and I just didn't feel like we were positioned to expose them in that way. Under normal circumstances, you guys know routinely we don't mind challenging our defense and putting them in challenging circumstances. But given the attrition that had transpired, particularly at the safety position, and some things that had transpired right there at the beginning, at the end of the first half, I thought it was more prudent, given the amount of time left in play, to try to work them on the long field and protect the defense.
Mike, your last win came against Cincinnati. What's gone the most wrong, or what's changed the most since that win?
I don't know that I'm looking for trends. I'm just looking at each individual performance and the things that we need to do better in terms of falling short. And within that, they're revealing themselves to us. And so most recently I've been focused on Indy and what we need to do better from that game. I try not to paint with a broad brush. Because each week the variables change. The challenges of the schematics of people that you play, the people available to you, et cetera. There are going to be some more variables at play this week that were different than a week ago.
Are there things from that first win that you guys can take and apply again in this game?
Certainly, but that's always the case.
Mike, you worry about confidence at this point?
Not mine.
Okay, well, what gives you that confidence? I mean, you're the one getting guys prepared.
51 years of life, man, most of which have been in football. That's probably what gives me confidence, but I can't necessarily transfer that to others. But if you're asking me specifically about mine, I'm good.
The back half of that decision with Boswell is the punt itself from Hardman. Under those circumstances, were you expecting the 10 on ends?
Certainly. A significant component of that failure, strategic failure, was a punt as much as anything else, man. If you're trying to put people on the long field, man, we're talking about 95 plus yards is what we're looking for under ideal circumstances. And I think they ended up with the ball roughly around 17. That's not what we were looking for.
Right, when you talk about your experience and also the need to embrace changes, can that be challenging when you've been in a position for 17 years, the idea of throwing away something maybe you've done a certain way for a long time and doing things differently?
Not for me personally. I'm not talking about, globally, but for me personally, I always pride myself in having a hardcore plan, but being light enough on my feet and being open to change and trends. That's just a business model, if you will, or mode of operation that I approach my business with.
Mike, when you talk about accountability and you mentioned like there's things you need to do better, how do you address that with your team as an overarching message to them about them also improving?
It's between us and them. Again, the details of that's probably best not served to outline in this setting.
And you talk about your confidence, you're confident in yourself. Is that needed to get the other guys to buy in and see that from you as the leader of the team?
I would imagine it is, but I don't, yeah, I would imagine it is, but very rarely am I lacking confidence.
What can you guys do to improve the defensive communication? Patrick Peterson said he wasn't sure if Mako had the communication helmet, and he said obviously suffered from Kazee.
Well, those issues are those issues. In-game issues that happen, the attrition component, those two guys going down, and then Trenton Thompson going down some, created some challenges. And so that is what it is. I am so appreciative of Pat and his position flexibility and what that gave us, to be quite honest with you. I probably should have mentioned that earlier. Man, position flexibility and his willingness and ability to do that really allowed us to function. But given, a normal cycle in terms of preparedness, it's going to be less of an issue. Obviously, it'd be an issue again if two safeties go down again in game. Not only in terms of the loss of their playmaking ability, knowledge, and in-helmet perspective on the prep that leads to play, but also the guys that replace them, they get thinned out because they don't, their special teams responsibilities aren't lessened in any way. And so you're losing some talent, some experience, some expertise, some preparedness, and you're also exposing those who are getting an increased role because they are, getting an increased role. And as fatigue, individual and collective fatigue sets in, communication, cohesion, and detail gets more challenging.
Mike, I know you said Mika is out this week. Is his injury a multi-week absence situation? Or
I don't know that, and that's why I specifically said it the way that I did. You can characterize him as out for this week. I have further information as the week goes on.
Are you planning on having Kazee, or do you think the NFL might do something?
I am by no means going to speculate on that. Doesn't help me, him, or football itself.
Like when you've got young guys on offense that, as you pointed out, maybe have trouble handling adversity. How difficult is it to get them past that when you don't have a ton of veteran guys on that side of the ball that have been there and have that experience to help them guide?
It's one of the many challenges of the job and the profession. It's something that, if you love coaching, man, you love that component of it, the teach component of it, the education component of it.
Mike, what are your encouraging points for Kazee and your other safeties about that specific play that you looked at?
Usually I talk about lowering the target. The target was low and both guys were going. It was just unfortunate. I know he is not a dirty player. He doesn't aspire to do some of the things that came to light under those circumstances. Sometimes it's just, professional football today and how difficult it is to operate. But the National Football League is really clear, man. They put 100% of the onus on the defender in those circumstances. It's unfortunate, but we understand it.
Like, one more confidence question. How confident that you can pull through this with 3 wins and make the playoffs?
I'm focusing my confidence on this week and this week's prep. I'm not a big picture guy under most circumstances. Those of you that have been around me know that.
Like, we've heard multiple leaders, especially defensively in the locker room, guys like TJ, Alex Highsmith, Cam Hayward, just talk about the fact that, players on the team need to look themselves in the mirror and take accountability. Do you feel that message is being heard across the locker room?
I believe it's heard, but how it translates into production, remains to be seen. We're working at it.
Anyone else?
Like, what is your message to the guys? There's been a lot of outside noise, obviously, but it's come from players, guys that may have been teammates that have been in that room. How do you guys handle that stuff?
Man, nobody outside our locker room is going to make a play. And so we better focus our energies on those that are inside the locker room and their level of readiness and their ability to, and how we divide the labor up. This is professional football. What we do gets analyzed. If you've been in this business any length of time, you know and understand that, and hopefully you embrace that. The competitor in you better embrace that. And so that's what I'm looking for from our collective. It's not about what we say at this junction. It's not about what anybody says at this juncture. The road is getting narrow. And so what you do when you step in stadiums speaks a hell of a lot more than what comes out of your mouth. That's my mentality. That's what I want their mentality to be. Oftentimes they address issues, outside noise and things of that nature. They're simply asking questions that are being relayed to them by you guys, which is their job. But it does not have our focus. Preparedness and our play at the end of the week has our focus.
Have you guys been prepared the last few weeks?
Our play have not reflected that, so I'm not gonna stand up here and seek comfort. If you look at the quality of our play, it doesn't reflect that. And so we gotta keep working.
Anyone else? All right.
Great, thank you guys.